You push open a cafe door at noon, hoping for a 5-minute oasis. Instead, 20 digital heartbeats collide. A smartwatch pings, a laptop dings, a delivery driver's phone announces an arrival. Someone's earbuds leak half a chorus, the espresso grinder screams. Your pocket vibrates 3 times before you reach the counter. Instinct overrides intention. Swipe. Headline number 1. Study finds blueberries boost memory. You tap, read 2 lines, then another buzz. DM from Sam. You coming tonight? Before answering Sam, you glance at the pastry shelf, decide you earned the croissant, and hear your name shouted by a barista you never quite saw. Cup collected, you scan for a seat, open another tab, AI just passed the bar exam. By the time milk foam meets tongue, headline number 1 has already evaporated. That vanishing act is not poor willpower, it's a cognitive tax called attention residue. In 2009, psychologist Sophie Leroy proved that when the mind switches tasks, a sticky film of the first task lingers, reducing accuracy and speed on the second. Digital life can spin 10 tasks per minute, so residue piles like soot inside a chimney. Try a quick audit right now. Without peeking, recite the last 3 shorts you watched this morning. Most can't recall even one. Not because memory is weak, but because the memory never consolidated. Neuroscientist Adam Gazzaley calls this the interference cascade. Every novelty pulse interrupts the hippocampus before it can file the previous pulse. Imagine carving names in wet cement while water hoses blast across the surface every 3 seconds. That is the modern timeline. Working memory tops out at 4 discrete chunks of information, says Nelson Cowan. Yet the average desktop user keeps 12 windows within a click and toggles them 37 times an hour. On mobile, it's worse. 15 notifications an hour, each a micro switch. The brain built for serial focus is forced into parallel chaos. The cost is not just lost productivity, it is the evaporation of experience before it can ripen into meaning. You consumed an article on blueberries, but never tasted the fact. Like swallowing food whole, rushing on, then wondering why you still feel hungry. Today we'll follow that hunger, diagnose the chemistry, meet the philosophers who warned us, scan the brain, and most important, rebuild attention into a muscle that can hold a moment long enough for joy to land. 3 neurotransmitters govern focus: dopamine, acetylcholine, norepinephrine. Dopamine is the scout, it surges when possibility glimmers. Acetylcholine is the spotlight, it locks consciousness onto one target and suppresses the rest. Norepinephrine provides energy and a hint of urgency. Endless scroll weaponizes dopamine but sidelines acetylcholine. Each swipe says, maybe the next post will thrill you. That maybe releases a micro-pulse of dopamine, but unpredictability prevents acetylcholine from stabilizing on any one image, so the spotlight shutters before the hippocampus, the brain's librarian, can stamp the memory. Novelty, yes. Consolidation, no. Stanford's 2023 fMRI switch cost study scanned heavy multitaskers versus, well, so-called focus monks. Task switchers showed constant activation in the anterior cingulate cortex, the error detector, and the insula, which is like the brain's salience hub, while the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, that's executive control, just flickered like a dying bulb. And get this, measured IQ during switching dropped by 30 points. For context, that's actually a larger dip than pulling an all-nighter. Structural damage, it kind of follows functional chaos. UCLA's 2024 digital brain fog longitudinal scan tracked 1,200 undergrads for 1 year. The top quartile multitaskers demonstrated hippocampal shrinkage of about 2 to 3%, atrophy levels that are actually comparable to mild traumatic stress. Memory loss isn't just a metaphor here, it's MRI math. Psychiatrist Anna Lemke's work on the pleasure-pain balance shows that every dopamine spike triggers an equal and opposite dip experienced as boredom, irritation, or even just low-grade anxiety. Once those spikes become a habit, the dip kind of merges into your baseline mood. Life starts to seem dull unless it's constantly peppered with novelty, and, honestly, even novelty loses its flavor. It's the neurochemical equivalent of inflating currency until money buys nothing. Evolution shaped the dopamine-acetylcholine duet to handle scarce and high-value rewards, like ripe fruit, a successful hunt, or even a friend's face after a long journey. The duet played out in 3 movements: anticipate, pursue, savor, and then, finally rest. But now, our devices compress all those movements into milliseconds and loop them literally thousands of times per day. The duet, well, it becomes a stutter and, eventually, just noise. Break the loop, and, surprisingly, the chemistry rebalances pretty fast. Lemke's patients who tried a 72-hour dopamine fast, so no phones, no junk food, no gaming, reported that on day 2 withdrawal hit hard. But by day 3, colors looked brighter, music felt more textured, and honestly boredom turned into curiosity. PET scans even confirmed dopamine receptor upregulation. The brain's antenna grew more sensitive once the static stopped. Here's the bottom line, it's not that you lack willpower, it's just that you're facing a biochemical headwind. To reclaim focus, we'll first cut that headwind, and then we'll work on lengthening the stride of your attention. In the arid deserts of the 4th century, far from the distractions of city life, a group of early Christian monks sought a deeper connection with the divine. Among them was Evagrius Ponticus, a contemplative thinker whose writings would echo through the centuries. Evagrius described a spiritual struggle not just with the outside world, but with the mind itself. He wrote about 8 demons, forces that could pull a monk away from their sacred purpose. But of all these, he considered one to be the most insidious and difficult to overcome. This was the demon of acedia, a word that doesn't quite translate into modern English, but which combines elements of listlessness, restlessness, and a kind of spiritual fatigue. Acedia was more than just laziness. It was a deep, gnawing sense of dissatisfaction, a resistance to the present moment, and a constant urge to be anywhere but here. According to Evagrius, acedia would creep in during the long, silent hours of solitude. The afflicted monk would find himself unable to sit still, compelled to leave his cell, pace the stone corridors, or gaze longingly out the window at the empty horizon. Anything, it seemed, was preferable to the discipline of staying put and facing the work of contemplation. The demon's goal was simple: to keep the monk from engaging with his scripture, from focusing on the sacred texts that were meant to anchor his mind and spirit. Instead, the monk would find himself inventing distractions, seeking novelty, or simply drifting into a fog of inattention. Fast forward to today, and the parallels are striking. The ancient struggle of the desert monks is mirrored in our own battles with distraction. The modern world is a landscape of constant interruptions. Our phones buzz, screens flash, and notifications demand our attention. We may not be pacing monastery halls, but we're just as likely to find ourselves unable to focus, pulled away from meaningful work by the lure of something, anything, else. Think about how often you reach for your phone without thinking, or wander to the fridge when you're not even hungry. These are the modern echoes of acedia, compulsive behaviors that offer a momentary escape from the discomfort of sustained effort. We scroll, we snack, we check and recheck our devices, all in an attempt to avoid the challenge of focusing on a single meaningful task. Even at work, the temptation is always there, refreshing your inbox, toggling between tabs, or sighing at your desk as you juggle multiple devices. It's a subtle form of avoidance, a way to dodge the discomfort that comes with deep, sustained concentration. Evagrius saw this for what it was, a spiritual and psychological challenge that required a conscious response. So, what was his advice? Evagrius prescribed what he called stability of place. He urged his fellow monks to resist the impulse to flee, to stay present with their discomfort, and to breathe through the urge to escape. This wasn't just about physical stillness, but about cultivating a kind of inner stability, a willingness to remain with the task at hand, even when it felt difficult or tedious. He believed that if you could sit with your restlessness, breathe deeply, and refuse to give in to distraction, the demon of acedia would eventually pass. In that stillness, you'd rediscover a sense of clarity and purpose, a renewed ability to focus on what truly matters. Centuries later, science would catch up with Evagrius's wisdom. Neuroimaging studies have shown that practices like mindful breathing and meditation can actually slow the body's stress response. When we pause and breathe, we activate the parasympathetic nervous system, calming the mind and reducing the urge to seek out distractions. This shift allows neurotransmitters like acetylcholine to take the lead, reigniting our brain's spotlight focus. In other words, the ancient monks were onto something profound. By learning to sit with discomfort and resist the pull of distraction, we can reclaim our attention and find meaning in the present moment. The philosophy of focus, from the desert to the digital age, is as relevant now as it was then. Fast forward to 20th century Paris. Jean-Paul Sartre asserted that consciousness is always consciousness of something. Attention selects the object, and that selection, well, it kind of defines existence. But when attention is split, existence is split too, a life diced into milliseconds honestly too thin to really register as being. Zen Master Tetsugen sits facing a blank wall, ringing a bell with each exhalation, About 8 seconds. EEG electrodes clipped to his ears reveal synchronous alpha waves, which actually signify relaxed yet vivid awareness. Compare that to a multi-tab laptop user whose electrodes spike beta waves, restless thinking, and burst gamma spikes, startle reflex every single time a notification hits. The master's mind sips, the laptop user's mind gulps, gasps, and forgets the taste. Philosopher Byung-Chul describes Western society as the burnout society. Endless self-activation leads to fatigue not from labor but from self-exploitation. Our productivity tools, honestly, they consume the very attention we need to be creative. Han's cure echoes the monk contemplation without performance, time spent simply noticing rather than producing. Contemplation feels wasteful in hustle culture. We tie worth to busy metrics, emails sent, steps logged, streaks maintained. Yet Harvard's deep work meta-analysis shows knowledge workers who block 3 hours of uninterrupted focus produce twice the output in half the time and report higher life satisfaction. Quality over quantity isn't moral preaching, it's empirical. When people recover focus, existential texture returns. Colors warm, flavors lengthen, memory relinks moments into narrative. This isn't mysticism, it's a nervous system shifting from scatter to coherence. Memory erodes first. So, the University of Sussex in 2022 gave volunteers 10 short stories. 5 they read while focusing on just that, and 5 while texting. After 24 hours, those who monotasked remembered 84% of the details, while multitaskers only managed 23%. And even worse, multitaskers recalled the emotional tone all wrong, labeling tragedies as may and comedies as vague. Emotion, honestly, needs our attention to really stamp itself. Creativity dries up next. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's idea of flow, really depends on sustained attention and a challenge that feels just right. In Harvard's Spark study, writers wore EEG caps. During those deep focus sessions, gamma bursts, those signals of insight, jumped by 50%. But during task switching, gamma bursts just flatlined. Ideas, it seems, really need unbroken time to incubate and hatch. Joy fades last, and it does so quietly. Joy isn't just about dopamine. It's actually serotonin plus this sense of neural completeness. When our tasks are all fragmented, completion never really happens. Serotonin stalls out, cortisol seeps in, and our mood just, slides into gray. Behavioral economist Daniel Kahneman found people feel happiest, not when multitasking, but when they're fully absorbed, even in something like dishwashing. Because that kind of absorption silences all the self-monitoring chatter. Psychiatrist Richard Sidowick coined the term limbic anchoring. Hands kneading bread, eyes tracking steam, ears catching kettle hiss. These sensory anchors relay data to the limbic system, grounding mood. Glass screen swipes lack texture, they lift one sense, sight, while starving the rest. The result? Disembodied fatigue. If you've ever finished a 3-hour scroll session feeling both exhausted and unsatisfied, you've tasted limbic dis-anchoring. Some people are natural multitaskers. But Stanford's Anthony Wagner found that the heavier the self-reported multitasker, the worse their selective attention in lab tasks. Multitasking skill is really just an illusion created by tolerance to constant distraction. Busy equals productive. Cal Newport tracked software engineers, and those who blocked deep work mornings actually shipped 30% more features than those living in Slack. Output stems from depth, not buzz. If I disconnect, I'll miss opportunities. The Edelson Happiness Index. 2024 shows users who capped social media to 30 minutes a day felt less lonely than 5-hour scrollers. Opportunity cost flips when well-being is measured. Distraction is inevitable in modern life. Historically, radio, TV, even the printed broadside triggered moral panic about attention. Society built norms. No TV at dinner, quiet cars on trains. Phones have no such etiquette yet, we can invent one. Myths are bars of the trap, exposing them loosens the latch. Anchor 10 ping hour. Pick 1 hour daily, all notifications off. Use a $5 kitchen timer. A University of British Columbia study found that after 1 week, zero ping participants showed a 25% drop in perceived stress and a 12% rise in task completion. Anchor 2, Monotask Sprint. Set a 25-minute Pomodoro. Full screen one window, phone in another room. Before starting, inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 1, exhale for 6. This activates parasympathetic calm. Draugium Group productivity data showed that employees using monotask sprints outperformed their peers by 40% output. Anchor 3 is the sensory anchoring ritual. Pick an analog micro-ritual, maybe grind coffee by hand, light a candle, or play one vinyl track. Tactile and olfactory input engage the limbic system, grounding your mood. Richard Sidgwick's lab actually noted a 15% serotonin uptick after just 5 minutes of tactile focus. Anchor 4 is the attention budget chart. This tool is designed to help you visualize, manage, and ultimately reclaim your most precious resource, your time and attention. In a world overflowing with distractions, notifications, and endless to-do lists, it's easy to lose track of where your minutes go. The attention budget chart brings clarity to your daily routine, making the invisible visible and the intangible tangible. By mapping out your day, you can see exactly how your attention is spent, and, more importantly, how you can take control of it. Start by drawing a circle that represents the total number of minutes in a day, 1,440. This is your full daily budget, every single minute you have from midnight to midnight. Think of it as your personal pie chart of time, a visual representation of the hours you have at your disposal. This simple act of drawing the circle is a powerful reminder that your time is finite and every minute counts. Next, begin allocating chunks of your attention budget to the essential activities that make up your day. Sleep, for example, is non-negotiable for your health and well-being, so you might allocate 480 minutes, 8 hours, to rest and recovery. Mark this clearly on your chart, and notice how much of your day is already spoken for before you even begin. Then set aside time for deep work, those focused, undistracted periods when you tackle your most important tasks. Maybe you allocate 180 minutes or 3 hours to this kind of work. This is the time when you're at your most productive, making real progress on your goals. Don't forget the other important categories. Shallow admin tasks like emails and paperwork might get 120 minutes, while connection, time spent with friends, family, or colleagues, could be 90 minutes. Leisure, the time you spend unwinding and recharging, deserves its own allocation, perhaps another 120 minutes. Each of these categories is a vital part of a balanced day. Finally, add in buffer time, about 150 minutes, to account for the unexpected, delays, transitions, or simply moments when things don't go as planned. This buffer is your safety net, giving you flexibility and reducing stress when life throws you a curveball. Here's the crucial insight. Any minute you don't consciously budget is a minute that can easily be claimed by someone else, by advertisers, social media platforms, or the endless stream of digital distractions. If you don't decide how to spend your time, someone else will. After just 2 weeks of using the attention budget chart, participants in a pilot program at Utrecht University reported a remarkable shift. Even though the number of minutes in their day stayed exactly the same, they felt a new sense of time affluence, a feeling of having enough time, rather than always being rushed or overwhelmed. By making their attention visible and intentional, they discovered the power of mindful time management. Try it for yourself and see how budgeting your attention can transform your day. Day 1, jitters, dopamine dips feel like an itch under the skin. Day 2, silence gets loud, boredom masks anxiety long postponed, hold still. Day 3, colors brighten, food tastes textured, and music regains its depth. By days 4 through 6, those deep work blocks actually double your output, and honestly, evenings start to feel way more spacious. On day 7, people even report this kind of time dilation, where 60 minutes just feels longer, because your consciousness is updating in fewer but much richer frames. Neuroscientist Amishi Jha's military mindfulness study found that recruits practicing just 10 minutes of focused meditation for 1 week boosted their working memory scores by 15%. Your 4 anchors, by the way, totally replicate that protocol, but without needing to sit in lotus posture. Take a moment to close every tab, even this one. Let your digital world fade into the background and physically step away from your screen. Walk over to a window, or just stand somewhere you can pause and breathe. This is your invitation to slow down, to let the pace of your day soften, and to reconnect with the world around you. For sight, let your eyes wander. Name the farthest thing you can see. Maybe it's a cluster of antennae etched against a washed blue sky, or the outline of distant trees, or the shimmer of sunlight on a rooftop. Notice the colors, the shapes, the way the light changes as you look further and further out. Let your gaze stretch beyond your immediate surroundings, and feel your perspective expand with it. For sound, tune in to the faintest hums and whispers around you. Maybe it's the gentle whir of air conditioning, the distant rumble of traffic, or the soft chirp of a bird perched nearby. Listen for the layers of sound that usually go unnoticed, the creak of a floorboard, the rustle of leaves, the quiet pulse of your own breath. Let each sound anchor you in the present moment. For smell, take a slow, deep breath. What do you notice? Maybe it's the rich aroma of coffee lingering in the air, the subtle scent of dust warmed by sunlight, or the fresh green promise of spring drifting through an open window. Let your senses search for something new or familiar and savor the details that make this moment unique. For taste, bring your attention to your mouth. Run your tongue along your teeth and notice the lingering flavor. Maybe it's the last sip of coffee, a hint of fruit, or just the freshness of your own breath. Even if you haven't eaten recently, there's always a subtle taste to discover. Let yourself be curious about it and appreciate the simple act of tasting. For touch, bring your awareness to the sensation of fabric on your skin. Feel the gentle pressure of your shirt collar against your collarbones, or the softness of your sleeve beneath your fingertips. Notice the temperature, the texture, the way your body feels supported and held. Let this simple act of noticing ground you in your own presence. That 5-sense inventory you just completed? That's your attention swelling back to its true size, expansive, present, and fully alive. In these few moments, you've called yourself back from distraction and reconnected with the world as it is, right now. Carry this awareness with you as you move forward, and remember, you can return to your senses and to yourself anytime you need. Alright, here's a challenge for you. Pick just one anchor and commit to it for 7 days. Drop a comment with your anchor, plus the one myth you're deciding to reject. And don't forget to tag it with #AttentionBudget so the community can, track each other's progress. I'll pin my own anchor too, and I'll update everyone on the results next month. Next episode is going to be pretty fascinating. Browser history versus autobiography, how search logs predict who we become. If you're ready to turn tracking tech into a mirror, go ahead and subscribe. And now we're fading to black. Sources: Scroll Leroy S. Why is it so hard to do my work? From 2009, Ghazali A. and Rosen L. The Distracted Mind, 2023 edition. Lemke A. Dopamine Nation, 2021. UCLA Brain Fog Study, 2024. Stanford Switch Cost, fMRI, 2023. Newport C. Deep Work, 2016. Han, B.C. The Burnout Society, 2015.